Now, more damning revelations are coming to light a day after the whistleblowing website WikiLeaks released its full archive of US diplomatic documents. More than 250,000 cables, much of it uncensored, were made available to the media. Among them was new information on riots that took place at Syria's infamous Sednaya military prison in 2008. Amnesty International says 52 prisoners went missing. Another 22 were killed after government forces went in to control the violence. At the time, the Syrian government said the prisoners were convicted terrorists and extremists, but it appears there's much more to the story. Well, Clayton Swisher is head of Al Jazeera's Transparency Unit. He joins me live on the studio now. Clayton, what more has come to light through these WikiLeaks leaks about those prison riots in Syria?
Well, this 2010 cable, it's aptly titled, "When the Chickens Come Home to Roost," and you'll find out why right now. The Syrian government approaches Islamist prisoners at the Sednaya military prison. They say to them, "We will release you, train you, provided you go and fight Americans in neighboring Iraq." Many of the prisoners oblige, off they go. Now, this is according to the U.S. government's sensitive reporting, human rights activists, 3 former prison inmates, a guard, credible testimony according to this cable. When the prisoners came back, they're now Iraq War veterans, rather than give them any sort of freedom, the Syrian government puts them right back in the cells that they had left. Obviously, they were very unhappy about this. This caused a series of disturbances in July of 2008. The result was the Syrian military surrounds the prison. They send in unarmed cadets, according to the cable, who were then overpowered. And the cable goes on in very descriptive language to talk about how the disgruntled prisoners overpowered these cadets who had batons, took their uniforms, put them on, dressed the cadets in prison garb, marched them up onto the roof of the prison. The Syrian military then shoots its own from the roof. Now, this led to a standoff. The prisoners were in charge of the prison from July until October 2008. They were trading military cadets in exchange for food. And then in December 2008, the Syrians go in with overwhelming force, kill many people, and still until now, as you mentioned, Human Rights and Amnesty International is demanding to find out what happened to all these prisoners who disappeared.
Clayton, let's just talk about the Americans for a second, because they've said all along that Syria was playing an unhelpful role in Iraq. Does this corroborate that?
Well, it does to an extent. It's an open secret. It's public information that Syria was cooperating with the U.S. government, the Pentagon, and the CIA up until around 2005, when the U.S. government started to say, okay, we finished with Iraq, maybe Syria, Damascus should be next. At that point, the Syrian government stopped their cooperation, and while this cable doesn't say when this happened, it doesn't say when it happened, it didn't say which elements of the Syrian government released these prisoners to go and fight the Americans. But it happened somewhere in this mix, obviously, when the Syrians weren't cooperating.
A final quick thought from you, Clayton. How will all of this play out now, given the uprising in Syria?
Well, one of the obvious claims of the Syrian government is that there are Islamists infiltrating these demonstrations. And obviously, our reporting establishes overwhelmingly that much of those claims are nonsense. But if there is an element of armed Islamist fighting that's taking place, it's clear from this cable that the Syrian government helped to train these people. In fact, they gave them the fighting experience when they sent them to Iraq to go and kill Americans. So if they're now upset with the government, they may have themselves to blame, Darren.
All right. Clayton, thank you very much indeed.